The Greeks and the Persians battled for over 175 years between the beginning of the Greco-Persian Wars in 499 BC and the end of Alexander the Great's Persian campaigns in 327 BC. Possibly hundreds of thousands of Greeks, Persians, and their allies perished in these conflicts. Both sides won impressive battles, but the Greco-Macedonians, they ultimately triumphed. For the civilizations involved in these wars, the cultural exchange that came about was enormous and has had long-lasting effects that are still felt and seen to this very day. This video covers the 10 most significant battles or sieges that were fought during these ancient wars, and are the battles from this era that are frequently the subjects of documentaries or cinematic reenactments, and are essentially the ones that are routinely mentioned in textbooks as well. Number 10. The Battle of Marathon, August to September of 490 BC. One of the most recognizable battles of all time, Marathon involved thousands of defending Greeks versus hundreds of thousands of invading Persians. The battle was the final decisive battle of the first Persian invasion of Greece. The battle was a punitive expedition by great King Darius I of Persia to punish Athens for supporting the Ionian Greeks in a revolt against Persia that had occurred earlier in 490. Despite overwhelming odds, the tactical supremacy of the Greeks proved more important than mere numbers. As such, Miltiades' Greeks triumphed in a battle that resulted in thousands of Persian deaths and the end of Darius' failed invasion. According to legend, the Greek messenger Pheidippides ran to Athens with news of the victory. He reported his news and then died of exhaustion. This fatal run inspired the athletic events which modern athletes usually survive. The Athenian victory was a major boost to Greek confidence and demonstrated that the citizen army of newly democratic Athens could excel, thereby also serving as a victory for democracy. Nevertheless, the Persians did not give up and, in fact, would return with an even bigger military bent on conquest rather than mere punishment. Number 9. The Battle of Artemisium and Thermopylae, from August to September of 480 BC. This battle marks the time that two important battles were fought on land and sea during the second and more elaborate invasion of the Greek city-states by the Persian juggernaut. After Darius' disaster at Marathon, his successor Xerxes planned a massive campaign to conquer the Greek city-states. The Persian forces included armies and navies of an unprecedented scale to that point in human history. The Persian naval forces at Artemisium numbered 800 to Greece's 271. The Persian army was even more astonishing. Modern estimates place the Persian forces at Thermopylae at as low as 70,000. Ancient historians claimed that the Persians numbered as high as 2.6 million. Both are incredible numbers, especially when we consider that a mere 5,200 to 11,200 Greeks stood against them. In either case, on both land and at sea, the Persians had a considerable numerical advantage, and not surprisingly, the Persians won in both cases, achieving strategic success and gaining control. Yet the Persians sustained many more losses than the Greeks. 200 Persian ships lost to 100 Greek ships, and 20,000 Persian soldiers lost to just 4,000 from Greece. These battles have become celebrated in Western civilization as examples of Western bravery, with slain Spartan King Leonidas I and his 300 Spartans being revered as heroes. Number 8. The Battle of Salamis, September 480 BC. At this point in the war, the situation it looked grim for Greece. The Spartan king, he was dead. The Persians had also followed up on their victories by not only desecrating Leonidas' corpse, but by capturing and even burning Athens. Yeah, the Persians had sustained greater numbers of losses in the twin land and sea battles, but they had greater numbers to begin with. Yet, astonishingly, Themistocles managed to lead the Greek city-states to a decisive victory at Salamis. The Greeks had 366 to 378 ships versus 600 to 1,200 Persian ships. Nevertheless, when all was said and done, the Greeks lost a mere 40 ships to Persia's losses of 200. The battle was one of the most significant in world history, as it meant Persia had failed to conquer the Peloponnesian Peninsula. Had they won, and had Athens and Sparta become a part of the Persian Empire, the subsequent history of the world would have been altered fundamentally. Keep in mind that it was after the Greco-Persian Wars that Athenian democracy and culture flourished. How would the careers and influence of everyone from Socrates to Plato have played out under Persian rule? As such, Salamis must rank among the 10 or so most important battles in all of human history. Number 7. The Battle of Plataea, August 479 BC. Yet Salamis was not the end of the war. Xerxes was obviously disillusioned by this point, but he still had a fairly large army in Greece, even if his navy had suffered a cataclysmic loss. The numbers were still lopsided in Persia's favour at the next crucial battle, at least according to ancient sources. Ancient historian Herodotus claimed that 110,000 Greeks opposed 300,000 Persians, though modern historians believe it was more like 80,000 Greeks versus a more comparable 70 to 120,000 Persians. In any case, by the time this battle concluded, anywhere from 159 to 10,000 Greeks had been lost to as many as 257,000 Persians. As a result of the battle, Persia lost both control of Attica and Boeotia. Shortly afterwards, the Greeks finished off the Persian invasion at the Battle of Mycale on August 27, 480. In the aftermath of this victory, Persia lost the Aegean Islands and Ionia, where the crisis that started the Greco-Persian Wars in the first place nearly 2 decades earlier began a second revolt against Persian rule. Number 6. The Battle of Aegospotami from 405 BC. For the remainder of the century, relations between the Greek city-states and Persia were not exactly pleasant. Greeks spent the next few decades after Plataea counterattacking the Persians in Asia Minor. The Athenian-led Delian League continued to fight Persia all the way until peace was finally agreed upon in 449. The war had lasted a brutal 50 years, but it was finally over. Only it wasn't really. Neither side had been destroyed in the conflict, which meant new wars could spring up to disturb the peace of the Aegean Sea. One of these was the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, which dragged on for nearly 30 years, 431 to 404 BC. In it, Sparta actually allied with Persia against Athens, so as to finally and decisively turn the tide of the war in Sparta's favour. In the decisive naval battle at Aegospotami, 180 Sparta, Persian, and Corinthian ships challenged 170 Athenian ships. Sparta and Persia suffered minimal losses, while Athens not only lost 150 ships, but they then endured the execution of 3,000 sailors. Next, Sparta besieged Athens. When the great city-state surrendered, the end of the Peloponnesian War had come. The Delian League was dissolved, and Sparta achieved hegemony in Greece, thanks in part to its former enemy, Persia. Number 5. The Battle of Cunaxa, September 3rd, 401 BC. With Sparta supreme in Greece, many Greek hoplites looking for adventure and employment went over to the forces of a rebel leader within the Persian Empire. The conflict, in which thousands of Greek mercenaries participated, pitted the rebel Cyrus the Younger against the great king Artaxerxes II. In the decisive battle, Cyrus died, leaving his 10,000 surviving Greek mercenaries stranded in the heart of the Persian Empire. Eyewitness soldier and historian Xenophon recorded the Odyssey back home through miles of opposition. As Xenophon and his fellow Greeks battled their way through the Persian Empire, Xenophon came to a fateful conclusion that he wrote in his book about his exploits. Persia belongs to the man who has the courage to attack it. Number 4. The Battle of Granicus, May 334 BC. That man with the courage to attack Persia ended up being Alexander III the Great. When Alexander became king of Macedon, he inherited a position of unprecedented power and influence in Greece from his father. In the years after the Battle of Cunaxa, Spartan hegemony had given way to Theban hegemony, thanks to Thebes' sacred band of warriors. But these two had eventually passed to another formidable army. In this case, rather than have yet another city-state dominate Greece, the northern kingdom of Macedon crushed the sacred band of Thebes at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC, in which Alexander participated. Philip became hegemon of the Corinthian League for just about all Greek city-states except for Sparta. As such, when Alexander became king of Macedon, he also led an army that included soldiers from a nearly unified Greece. The Greeks still sought revenge for the burning of Athens over a century earlier, while some Macedonians claimed that Persia was behind Philip's assassination. As such, Alexander and his Greco-Macedonian force went over to Asia Minor. The first critical battle of the expedition occurred at Granicus River near Troy. Alexander, seeing himself as a new Achilles, personally fought in the battle. After killing some Persians, Alexander was stunned by a blow delivered by a Persian nobleman. The Greco-Macedonian invasion of Persia nearly ended there before Alexander could become great, but his friend Cleitus cut off the nobleman's arm before the Persian could deliver a coup de grace. The Persians lost some 3,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry. Another 2,000 of their soldiers were also captured. Number 3. The Battle of Issus, 5th of November, 333 BC. After Alexander's triumph at the river Granicus, he gained control of half of Asia Minor. He followed up on this great victory with one of his most legendary actions. He reportedly came across the famed Gordian knot that only the future king of Asia could untangle. Alexander essentially cheated by severing the knot with his sword, yet he still had to actually conquer Asia. After his victories in Asia Minor, the king of Persia, Darius III, took Alexander seriously enough to lead his army to confront him. In a battle in which 40,850 Greco-Macedonians fought against 25,000 to 108,000 Persians, Alexander's army sustained 7,000 losses to Darius's 20,000. As a result of this battle, Alexander now gained control of southern Asia Minor and also captured Darius's wife and daughter. Alexander later married the younger of the two, further cementing his claim to the Persian throne. Number 2. The Siege of Tyre, January to July of 332 BC. Rather than pursue Darius directly, Alexander next turned his attention to conquering the Persian coastline along the Mediterranean Sea so as to prevent Darius from sending any ships that might harass Alexander and cut off his line of supply. A key strategic coastal city was the Phoenician city of Tyre. Through winter, spring, and even summer of 332 BC, Alexander's forces besieged the stubborn city. In order to attack the city, which was partially located on an island, Alexander had to build a kilometer-long causeway to transport his forces. He also received over 100 ships from Cyrus that joined his cause. A combination of 223 galleys in total supported Alexander. Using brilliant technological feats, Alexander eventually captured the island at a cost of 400 of his men. Tyre, by contrast, felt the full force of Alexander's wrath. 8,000 Tyrians were killed in the siege or executed afterwards, while perhaps 30,000 civilians were enslaved. With the siege, Alexander now ruled the Levant in addition to most of Asia Minor and Greece. He then continued southward and, using the same siege engines he used at Tyre, he besieged Gaza. In that siege, Alexander sustained 3,760 losses, while 19,000 Persian and Egyptian defenders succumbed. By the end of 332, Alexander had also become pharaoh of Egypt, where he also claimed to be the son of a god. Number 1. The Battle of Gaugamela, October 1st, 331 BC. After over a century of Greco-Persian conflicts, we finally come to the decisive battle of the Greco-Persian Wars. An undefeated Alexander the Great would meet Darius the Great. Then at Gaugamela, where up to 40,000 Greco-Macedonians would face a defending army of 50,000 to 1 million men. It was one of the biggest battles in history, and at its end, Alexander lost 100 to 500 of his infantry and up to 1,000 of his cavalry. Darius, meanwhile, had lost an irreplaceable 40 to 90,000, in addition to maybe 300,000 captured in a single battle. As a result, Alexander won Babylon, half of Persia, and the rest of Mesopotamia that he had not previously conquered. Darius survived the battle, only to be betrayed by a subordinate named Bessus. This man killed Darius and declared himself the King of Kings. Alexander, he was not pleased with this, and he hunted Bessus down, captured him, and then had him executed in 329 BC. With Bessus dead, Alexander was undisputed King of Macedon, hegemon of the Corinthian League, pharaoh of Egypt, king of Asia, and now great king of Persia. Persepolis, the capital of Persia, had been burnt, possibly in revenge for Persia's burning of Athens back in 480 BC. Alexander's influence did not truly disappear until nearly 300 years later in 30 BC with the defeat and death of the Ptolemaic Egyptian queen Cleopatra VII in 30 BC, a descendant of one of Alexander's commanders. With her ended the last remnants of the Greco-Macedonian civilization that battled and eventually triumphed against Persia for nearly 2 centuries. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, give us a thumbs up below. Don't forget to subscribe. Brand new videos just like this every day of the week. If you're looking for something else to watch right now, why not click on one of the videos on the screen? And as always, thank you for watching.